Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. I want you to take a second and just imagine stepping into what really should be the most predictable phase of your entire life.
Right, like a totally scripted routine.
Exactly. You're entering the traditional arranged marriage setup. And, for millions of people, this isn't just some cultural milestone. It is the ultimate structured pathway to adulthood.
It's essentially a system that's designed to mitigate risk, right?
Yeah, 100%. You exchange the biodatas, you meet the family, you meet the partner, you check off all those compatibility boxes like education and background, and you just start building this really safe, highly conventional future.
Everything is mapped out for you.
Everything. But now, I want you to imagine taking that perfectly predictable life milestone and having it abruptly, violently hijacked by a gritty, true crime scenario.
Oh, man. It is the ultimate collision of two completely opposing forces. I mean, when you think about it.
It really is.
You have the absolute safety of tradition just slamming headfirst into the chaotic, bloody reality of a murder investigation. The structure you've relied on suddenly means absolutely nothing.
And that collision is exactly what we are getting into today. We're pulling from this incredible source guide called Secrets of the Altar to break down Chetan Bhagat's novel, One Arranged Murder.
Which is such a fascinating book to tear apart.
It really is. Our mission today is to essentially tear down the facade of the so-called perfect life. We're going to look at how this arranged marriage setup turns into a gripping mystery and what it reveals about modern relationships.
Because it's a brilliant premise. It acts as like a stress test for human
The
connection.
stress test. I like that.
Yeah, because this isn't just a standard thriller where a detective shows up. It's a very clever synthesis of romance, mystery, and, a really sharp commentary on the curated architecture of our social lives.
Okay, let's unpack this because to really understand how devastating this collision is, we have to look at the baseline first.
We need to understand the psychology of the people walking into the setup.
Right. So our protagonist is a guy named Keshav. And Keshav operates entirely on logic. He's a coder.
A literal coder, yeah.
So he desperately wants clean lines, predictable outcomes, and zero drama. For a guy like him, the arranged marriage system isn't an archaic tradition. It's like a highly efficient matching algorithm.
Precisely. He processes the whole human experience through logic gates. Like, if X happens, then Y should be the result.
Match the data points and get a stable marriage.
Exactly. Income, family background, temperament. He even has this deeply ingrained habit of applying what you could call detective-like thinking to everyday situations.
Right, with his best friend, Sarab.
Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah.
His brain is completely wired to look for patterns, identify anomalies, solve puzzles. But historically, he applies that analytical rigor to keeping his own life totally insulated from emotional chaos.
He wants to compile his life code without any syntax errors. But, human variables just don't code neatly, do they?
Really don't.
Which brings us to his arranged marriage match, Ananya. She is the total anomaly in his data set.
Ah, completely.
She is modern, fiercely independent, super confident, and just deeply embedded in this vibrant, complex social circle. It's like, okay, let me put it in a way Keshav might understand.
Let's hear it.
He is trying to build this perfectly locked down, highly predictable spreadsheet for his future. But Ananya introduces all these wild qualitative variables that his rigid code simply isn't equipped to parse.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The author is establishing this massive psychological juxtaposition right out of the gate.
It's pure logic meeting chaos.
Right. You have a purely logical protagonist expecting a straightforward, almost transactional transition into married life. He genuinely thinks he's just running a software update on his relationship status.
Software update, yes.
But Ananya challenges that simplicity just by existing in his space,
Yeah.
She forces him to realize that a partnership isn't a math problem you can solve, it's a dynamic you have to navigate.
And we can't fully grasp Ananya's world or the illusion of the whole arranged marriage algorithm without looking at her best friend, Prerna.
Oh, Prerna. Yeah, she's crucial here.
Because Prerna represents the successful deployment of the exact system Keshav believes in. She's recently married, and from the outside, she is living the absolute ideal.
The picture-perfect, frictionless domestic life.
Exactly. She is the benchmark.
She is the living proof that the system works. For Keshav and Ananya, who are just starting out, awkwardly trying to figure out if their vastly different personalities can even coexist, Prerna is the glowing end goal.
Right, she represents the safety and success that the structure promises.
But then the system completely crashes.
Here's where it gets really interesting,
Yeah.
because the inciting incident drops and it completely obliterates that illusion of safety. Prerna, the girl with the flawless aspirational life, is found dead in her apartment.
It's shocking.
We move instantly from this light, almost rom-com tension of opposites attracting straight into a nightmare.
It's a violent paradigm shift. One moment, you're trying to navigate the polite awkwardness of getting to know your new partner over coffee, and the next, you are standing at a crime scene.
The psychological whiplash has to be insane.
Immense. Just immense for these characters.
And the details of that scene are what really trigger Keshav. Because initially, the authorities look at the situation and they label it a tragic suicide.
Right, which is neat. It's closed.
It makes sense to a casual observer. But here is where Keshav's coder brain, that obsessive need to resolve anomalies, just kicks into overdrive. He cannot accept the suicide theory.
No, his brain literally rejects it.
So how exactly does his analytical mind start dismantling the official story?
Well, it comes down to identifying logical inconsistencies that a normal, emotionally overwhelmed person would just miss completely.
Because they're grieving.
Exactly. When you view the world as an algorithm, an anomaly feels physically abrasive. Keshav looks at the physical evidence, the timings, the angles.
The behavioral data leading up to the event.
Yes. And the math simply doesn't add up. His brain rejects the suicide conclusion because the inputs don't match the output. The physical clues point to something meticulously staged.
It points to murder.
It points to murder.
And this leads to the ultimate curtain pull. As Keshav and Ananya start pulling on these loose threads, the entire facade of Prerna's life just unravels.
It totally falls apart.
They uncover that her supposedly perfect husband is highly suspicious. He's hiding severe financial and emotional irregularities. They find out her past is a labyrinth of dark, closely guarded secrets.
It's wild.
This wasn't a perfect marriage at all. It was a beautifully staged Zillow listing. But the moment you open the closet doors, all the foundational rot and structural damage just comes pouring out.
Okay, that is a phenomenal analogy. The Zillow listing. We live in an era heavily defined by the performative nature of domestic bliss.
Oh, absolutely. The highlight reel.
Everyone curates their highlight reel, whether on social media or at family gatherings. Prerna was maintaining a flawless, real-world highlight reel.
And it was completely fake.
Right. The brutal shattering of that facade forces you, as the reader, to look at the quote-unquote perfect couples in your own life and really question the architecture of their relationship.
It makes you realize that absolute perfection is usually a cover for profound dysfunction.
Always.
It's terrifying,
Yeah.
honestly. But here's what I find so fascinating about the psychology of our protagonist couple.
Yeah.
Instead of backing away from this nightmare, instead of Keshav saying, look, this is way too much drama, my algorithm is failing, I'm out, he and Ananya lean in.
They dive right into the deep end.
They take it upon themselves to investigate. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Is jumping into a high-stakes murder investigation the ultimate bizarre icebreaker for two strangers in an arranged marriage?
It absolutely is, because trauma bypasses the small talk phase entirely.
It just skips it.
Think about the standard, highly manicured trajectory of an arranged marriage. You go on supervised dates, you ask incredibly polite, vetted questions about 5-year plans and dietary preferences.
What's your favorite color? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Yeah.
Exactly. It is entirely surface level and heavily guarded. But a murder investigation. Extreme stress strips away all those pleasantries and societal masks instantly.
Right. You aren't asking what their favorite movie is. You're seeing how they react when someone lies right to their face.
You see their actual core.
You're seeing how they process fear, how brave they are, how loyal they are when the stakes are literally life and death.
It accelerates intimacy at a terrifying speed. You see the raw, unfiltered version of the person sitting across from you. But, uncovering these dark secrets is not a straightforward process.
No, not at all.
And the author ensures that the mechanics of the suspense reflect the messy reality of getting to know someone.
Let's talk about those mechanics, actually, because the way this mystery is constructed is incredibly deliberate. Every time Keshav and Ananya find a new piece of evidence, it doesn't solve the puzzle.
No, it just fractures the truth even more.
The suspects just multiply.
The author builds this brilliantly structured labyrinth where trust becomes a constantly shifting, highly volatile commodity.
It's exhausting in the best way.
Right. We assume a grieving husband is innocent until a hidden bank statement reveals a massive motive. We assume a loyal friend is telling the truth until a deleted text message surfaces.
The narrative constantly forces you to anchor your trust in a character, only to violently yank that anchor away a chapter later.
You are constantly thinking, okay, the puzzle is solved, we have the killer, and then the next variable completely rewrites the equation.
But there's a stylistic choice here that I really want to dissect.
Okay, let's hear it.
Chetan Bhagat is known for using very accessible, simple language, short chapters, and remarkably, a lot of light humor mixed into this intense suspense.
Right, it's very beginner-friendly.
Yeah, but my initial thought is, doesn't that risk diluting the gravity of a murder? Like, doesn't cracking jokes while hunting a killer ruin the dark, gritty atmosphere you want in a thriller?
It's a very common critique when authors blend these specific tones, but in this case, the humor isn't just comic relief.
No.
No, it is a highly calculated psychological tool. The accessibility of the language and the injection of everyday banter serve a very specific purpose. They disarm your brain's natural defenses.
Wait, so the humor is essentially a cognitive Trojan horse?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, wow.
Because when you pick up a dense, dark, gothic, true crime thriller, your guard is up before you even read the first page. Your amygdala is on high alert, expecting doom, violence, betrayal at every turn.
You are totally braced for impact.
Right. But when the narrative is breezy, when the dialogue sounds like two normal people making sarcastic observations about their families, your brain relaxes, you laugh, you let your guard down.
And that is exactly when the author drops the devastating plot twist.
Precisely. Because you weren't bracing for it, the shock hits exponentially harder.
The contrast makes the darkness feel significantly more profound. By lowering your emotional defenses with a joke, the subsequent trauma of a betrayal or a gruesome discovery penetrates much deeper.
It mimics the core theme of the story, really. Appearances versus reality.
The book appears to be a light, easy read, but the reality is that it's a deeply complex, twisted psychological trap.
I love that. The medium literally is the message. The book itself wears a mask of simplicity to hide its darker nature, just like the characters do.
That is so clever. Now, amidst all these shifting suspects, Trojan horse plot twists, and unraveling facades, there's a completely different narrative engine driving the story forward.
The relationship.
Yes. Underneath the whodunit, Bhagat is actually telling a very profound relationship growth story.
It is the emotional crucible of the entire narrative. Because if Keshav and Ananya's relationship remains static, the mystery would just be a sterile intellectual exercise.
It would just be a logic puzzle.
Right. The brilliance of the story is that the act of dissecting someone else's failed marriage becomes the exact mechanism that builds their own.
Yes. They start out fundamentally isolated from each other. You have the rigidly logical introvert and the socially fluid modern woman.
Totally different worlds.
But the extreme pressure of the investigation acts as a forge. They are thrust into a situation where everyone around them is lying. The family is lying, the friends are lying, the authorities are looking the other way.
The only person they can definitively rely on is each other.
It forces absolute authenticity. In a normal timeline, it might take decades to build a kind of deep, unshakable trust that survives major life crises.
Oh, easily decades.
But when you are hunting a killer who might be sitting next to you at a dinner party, you are forced to synchronize with your partner immediately.
You have to learn how they think, how they communicate without speaking, and how they handle failure.
I was thinking about this, and the whole investigation really feels like a massive, high-stakes metaphor for marriage itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a remarkably apt metaphor.
I mean, you're cross-examining suspects, reading between the lines of alibis, which honestly isn't that different from trying to figure out what your new partner actually meant when they said, no, I'm fine, do whatever you want.
Right, the classic trap. But think about the fundamental requirements for any successful partnership, especially one where you are essentially starting from scratch with a stranger.
It requires deep understanding, unwavering trust, and immense patience.
And a murder investigation requires those exact same traits. You have to decipher clues, which is the equivalent of learning to decode a partner's emotional language.
And you have to manage a chaotic roster of suspects and witnesses, which is exactly like navigating the historical biases and egos of new in-laws and extended family.
It's spot on. You have to separate historical family baggage from current facts. And most importantly, in both an investigation and a marriage, you have to push through incredibly painful, uncomfortable truths to find genuine connection.
Because finding the truth about someone else is never a clean, straight line.
Never. It is messy, it is often deeply disappointing, but it is absolutely necessary if you want a foundation based on reality rather than illusion.
So what's this all mean? That brings up a fascinating debate, actually. Do we need a crucible to form a truly unbreakable bond?
That's a great question.
Because the story gives us this highly realistic portrayal of the emotional struggles and misunderstandings of modern relationships, but it dresses it up in a thriller. It makes you wonder if couples who just have a smooth, easy courtship ever develop the kind of profound trust that Keshav and Ananya forge in the fire of this investigation.
It's a sobering thought. The story argues that true intimacy is forged in the confrontation of ugly realities. When everything is perfect, you are only falling in love with the presentation.
A Zillow listing.
Exactly, the listing. When everything falls apart, that's when you fall in love with the actual person.
Which brings us to the ultimate takeaways from this deep dive. We've journeyed from the predictable spreadsheet logic of a traditional arranged marriage, watched the illusion of perfection shatter into a million pieces, navigated a maze of psychological suspense.
And realize that extreme pressure is what actually creates genuine human connection.
Yes, the overarching lessons here are incredibly stark. First, the performative nature of our lives is a universal lie. No matter how flawless the architecture of a relationship looks from the outside, it is never that simple.
Never. Every single person is operating with a hidden narrative.
Everyone.
The persona they present to the world, the one that gets the social validation, is heavily edited. Believing in that edit is what makes us vulnerable.
Second, building actual trust is an incredibly strenuous, fragile process. It requires immense vulnerability and willingness to risk your own comfort.
Finding the truth about a crime, or just about your partner's deepest fears, demands that you look closely at the things you would much rather ignore.
Because behind every highly curated, perfect life is a messy, complicated truth waiting to be uncovered.
That is the core revelation. It entirely shatters the myth of the flawless partnership. It forces both the characters and the reader to accept that human beings cannot be solved by algorithms or traditional checklists.
So as you go about your day, I want you, the listener, to really observe your surroundings. Think about your own social circles, your colleagues, the people whose lives you casually scroll past on your phone.
It's the highlight reels.
Right. How often do you accept their surface-level perfect image without ever considering the structural reality holding it up? How often do you look at a couple and feel a pang of jealousy, thinking they have cracked the code to happiness, when the reality behind their closed doors might be a chaotic mess of compromises and secrets?
It is entirely human nature to compare our own messy, chaotic insides to everyone else's pristine, carefully filtered outsides.
We all do it.
But understanding the mechanics of a story like this demands that we stop doing that. It demands that we recognize the inherent complexity in every single person we meet. Which leads me to a somewhat unsettling question to leave you with.
I love when we get to the unsettling part. What are we pondering today?
Well, we've talked extensively about how trauma and extreme stress acted as the crucible that rapidly forged a genuine, unshakable connection between Keshav and Ananya.
Right.
Their bond was built because they had to confront the absolute worst of human nature together. So it makes you wonder about the way we operate today.
In what way?
In our modern society, we are obsessed with friction-free relationships. We use dating apps designed to filter out red flags instantly. We ghost people at the first sign of conflict. We seek out comfortable, perfectly aligned partnerships with zero resistance.
The algorithm again.
Exactly. If enduring the fire of conflict is what actually creates deep trust, does our modern obsession with easy, frictionless love actually prevent us from ever truly knowing the people we commit our lives to?
Wow. Are we engineering our own emotional isolation by avoiding the difficult conversations?
That's the question.
From believing you can compile a perfectly predictable spreadsheet of a partner, to realizing that the friction you are trying to avoid might be the only thing that actually makes the relationship real. It completely changes how you look at the challenges in your own life.